The pounding on the door rattled the frame like an earthquake, so hard that even the picture of my father's medals tilted on the wall. When I opened it, my blood froze. Standing there was Karen, the HOA president, her massive frame blocking the morning light, flanked by two rent-a-cops she had somehow convinced to dress like deputies. Her fingers stabbed the air with the arrogance of someone who believed she was the law itself. "You have 20 minutes to vacate this property," she barked, loud enough for the entire street to hear. "The HOA has decided your repeated violations, your flags, your unapproved landscaping, your so-called modifications disqualify you from living here. Pack your things. This house belongs to the community now." The words punched the air from my lungs. This was our home, bought with my wife's years of service at sea, the mortgage paid on time every single month. But Karen's eyes gleamed with power, and the two men beside her flexed their shoulders like they were ready to drag us out. My wife, Commander Sarah Hayes, had just come back from deployment the week before. She stepped beside me in the doorway, still in casual clothes, but with the kind of presence that made entire rooms go quiet. Her voice cut through Karen's theatrics like a blade. "This house is ours. You have no authority here." Karen sneered, puffing her chest. "Oh, I have every authority. The HOA has bylaws. And according to those bylaws, you are no longer welcome." Her tone was dripping with triumph, like she had already won. Neighbors began to gather across the street, whispering, filming, trying to piece together the chaos. Sarah didn't flinch. She crossed her arms and stared Karen down with the exact calm she used when commanding sailors on a stormy deck. "Bylaws don't override federal property law. You are trespassing." The words were ice, steady, and lethal. Karen tried to laugh, but it came out jagged. "Trespassing? I'm the president of this neighborhood." One of her fake deputies chimed in. "Ma'am, we've been instructed to remove you if you don't comply." That was the moment my stomach twisted because they weren't bluffing. Karen had turned her delusions into a full-scale eviction stunt. But then came the twist. Sarah walked back inside calmly, leaving Karen crowing in victory, until seconds later she returned in full Navy dress uniform, her medals glinting in the morning sun. The sight was breathtaking, enough to silence the murmurs in the crowd. She stood tall, shoulders squared, every inch the commander she was. When she spoke, her voice boomed like the crash of waves. "Under federal law, this property is secured. Any attempt to remove us by force will be considered illegal entry and obstruction against a U.S. Navy officer. Do you understand?" The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's face drained of color, but she rallied, screeching, "You can't intimidate me with a costume. This is HOA business, not military business." But Sarah didn't even blink. She pulled a folded document from her uniform pocket, the property deed, with both our names printed clear. She held it up high for everyone to see, her voice rising so no one could miss it. "This house is legally ours. These people are not deputies. They are impersonators. And this woman is attempting an unlawful eviction." Gasps erupted from the neighbors. Phones zoomed closer, and one man shouted, "She brought fake cops." The two so-called deputies suddenly looked less confident, their postures sagging as whispers of arrest and jail time rippled through the crowd. Karen sputtered, "No, they're authorized. Two hired them to enforce the rules." But the truth was unraveling faster than she could spin it. And then, as if fate wanted to drive the nail deeper, a black SUV rolled up to the curb. Out stepped Lieutenant Commander Harris, one of Sarah's colleagues from base, in full uniform. He had come to drop off a box of supplies Sarah had left behind, but when he saw the scene, his expression hardened. "What's going on here?" His presence shifted the atmosphere instantly. Two Navy officers standing shoulder to shoulder, facing down Karen and her crumbling authority. Karen's eyes darted desperately, but there was nowhere to run. Harris pulled out his phone and called local law enforcement. His words clipped. "I have impersonators posing as deputies at an attempted unlawful eviction. Send real officers immediately." Karen tried to snatch his phone, but Sarah's K-9 instincts, those sharp, precise reflexes honed by years of command, kicked in. She stepped forward, raising her hand like she was back on deck commanding a crew. "Enough, Karen. You're finished." The wail of real police sirens shattered the standoff like a hammer through glass. Within minutes, two squad cars rolled up, their lights flashing red and blue against the houses lining the street. The fake deputies' faces drained of color as the officers stepped out, hands on their belts, eyes narrowing at the spectacle before them. One officer barked, "Identify yourselves." Now, the so-called enforcers stammered, fumbling for non-existent badges until one of them muttered, We were hired by her," pointing straight at Karen. The betrayal made her snap around so fast her jowls quivered. "Don't you dare throw me under the bus," she screeched, but it was too late. They were already being cuffed, their cheap plastic holsters clattering to the pavement. The officer turned his attention to Karen, his voice stern. "Ma'am, what exactly were you trying to do here?" She tried to puff herself up again, but the weight of the cameras, the uniforms, the truth pressing down made her sound more hysterical than authoritative. "This family is in violation of HOA bylaws. I was simply enforcing our right to evict," Sarah cut in with a voice like steel, clear enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "HOAs have no legal right to evict anyone. She attempted to remove us with force and impersonated authority to do it. That is criminal." The crowd erupted in agreement. A neighbor shouted, "She fined me $300 for leaving my trash cans out one night." Another yelled, "She threatened to foreclose my house when I painted my fence." One by one, people came forward, their voices trembling with years of pent-up frustration, exposing Karen's intimidation tactics. The police officer scribbled notes, his jaw tightening. "That's enough for us to open a full investigation." Karen's last shred of arrogance cracked. She tried lunging toward me, jabbing her finger in my face. "You did this. You and your military wife think you're better than all of us." But before she could spit another word, Sarah stepped forward in her uniform, medals gleaming. She didn't raise her voice, but the authority in her tone made even the police fall silent. "I don't think I'm better, Karen. I just know the law. And you broke it." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. The officers moved in, their cuffs clicking around Karen's wrists. She wailed like a siren, thrashing, her face blotchy with rage. "You'll regret this. All of you. I am this community." But nobody rushed to her defense. Not this time. The neighbors filmed, some openly smiling, others shaking their heads in disbelief. For years, Karen had been the queen of fines, threats, and letters slipped under doors. Now she was just a disgraced tyrant being loaded into a patrol car, her shrieks muffled by the slamming door. The twist came a week later. The county investigators uncovered boxes of falsified violation notices, secret ledgers of special fines, and tens of thousands of dollars siphoned into Karen's personal accounts. She had been running the HOA like a personal empire, bleeding neighbors dry under the guise of protecting property values. Local news ate it up, plastering her mugshot across every channel with headlines like HOA president arrested in fraud and harassment scandal. The video of Sarah standing firm in her uniform, calling out Karen's lies, went viral overnight. The comments poured in. "That's how you handle a bully. Marry someone like her. Respect to this Navy commander." At the next neighborhood gathering our first, without Karen the change was tangible. People who had avoided one another out of fear now chatted freely. Kids ran across lawns without worry of noise violations, and someone even set up a barbecue on the street corner. Sarah walked through the crowd quietly, but everywhere she went, people clapped her on the back or stopped to say thank you. Even Mrs. Lou, who used to tremble at Karen's shadow, brought over a tray of dumplings and whispered, "You gave us back our peace." The HOA was dissolved by unanimous vote, replaced with a voluntary neighborhood committee where decisions were transparent and collective. No more arbitrary fines. No more threats. The house that Karen had tried to take became a symbol. Our house, guarded by the calm courage of my wife, stood as proof that entitlement and corruption had limits. The most powerful moment came months later, during the trial. Karen stood in court, her once arrogant voice reduced to pitiful whimpers as the charges were read. Fraud, impersonation of authority, attempted unlawful eviction, harassment. Sarah attended in uniform, her posture unshakable, her silence more powerful than any accusation. When the guilty verdict came down, the judge's gavel echoed like thunder. Karen's head drooped, her empire of intimidation crumbling into dust. Walking out of that courthouse, Sarah squeezed my hand and whispered, "Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just refusing to move when someone tries to shove you. Her words sank into me, and I realized she hadn't just saved our home, restored the dignity of an entire neighborhood. Now, months later, the cul-de-sac feels alive again. Neighbors wave instead of hiding. Kids ride bikes without fear of citations. And every evening, when Sarah steps out in the yard in her plain clothes, no uniform in sight, I see the quiet respect in the way people greet her. Not because she's a commander, but because she stood tall when it mattered most. Karen thought she could break us with fake authority. But in the end, she broke herself, trapped by her greed and arrogance. And Sarah, my wife, my anchor, my hero, proved that true authority doesn't come from titles or threats. It comes from integrity, courage, and the refusal to back down. So what do you think? Was Karen's downfall the justice she deserved? Or should the community have given her another chance before it came to this? Share your thoughts, because in stories like these, the line between right and wrong is drawn by what we choose to tolerate.